All right. Good morning, my friends. Happy Monday. I hope you guys all had a phenomenal weekend. I know that the weekends have been busy. I see all the showings everybody is going on, all of the offers you guys are putting in. I know we're getting a lot of questions coming in over the weekends and today about, hey, recommendations on offers or counter offers that you're getting. So I know that there has been a lot of activity. And so I love it. I love hearing kind of what we're seeing out on the field, all the activity that's happening. I'm going to note, I wanted to share something with you guys this morning before we kind of jump into just the regular market update, because I heard a phenomenal story this morning on our leadership call about what I feel was very much a mission moment for Keller Williams that dealt a lot with our auxiliary services. So I think when we get into a market like this, where there's a lot of different challenges that kind of come into place, and we know what life happens sometimes, right? Life happens. Human error is a thing, and sometimes the ball gets dropped, and it causes issues on transactions moving forward. And so I heard a phenomenal culture moment this morning, and I wanted to share that with you. There was an agent who was representing a buyer, and they were utilizing Keller Mortgage as the lender for the service, right? So they were utilizing it was a woman representing her client. It was first-time home buyers, and they were able to get their offer accepted on a listing. And unfortunately, life happens, right? And the buyer's agent, her husband suffered from, I don't know if it was a heart attack or stroke, but what happens, right? She forgets to send the executed contract to her loan officer at Keller Mortgage, right? Doesn't send it to the transaction coordinator. And so the loan process does not start. It was also during a holiday week. So dealing with the holidays, right? We lose business days, timelines get a little bit wonky. And so the agent, all of a sudden the listing agent started blowing up this buyer agent's phone. Like, hey, we haven't had an appraisal ordered. We haven't had any of these things haven't happened. What's going on? Are you not executing on the deal? Let's cancel, all of these different things. The buyer's agent, who is dealing with this tragedy at home, calls her Keller Mortgage representative and was in tears, and basically tells the representative and says, look, this is what's going on. I'm so sorry. I forgot to send this over. We're in a really tight time frame. They're threatening to cancel. What can we do? And now, because there's holiday week, because there's a certain amount of days that are absolutely required in order to make sure that you can process that loan, get the appraisal done, get documents ordered, get it funded, they were in a really short timeline. And yet that mortgage officer called her sales manager and she asked them, what can we do to make this happen? And they ordered the appraisal same day. Thankfully, the clients were already desk underwritten as well. They were able to get all of that done. And yet in the midst of this agent is suffering from this insane tragedy that's happening at home. And the listing agent, unfortunately, was not someone that really represented, compassion or culture or understanding, and was blowing up their phone while they're dealing with hospital visits and all of these other things in the midst of the transaction as well. And so the loan officer said this. She said, look, let me call the listing agent. Let me take the blame, right? And say that it was me who dropped the ball and that the contract went into my spam inbox, which was not true, right? It was originally the buyer's agent who had not sent over the contract in the midst of life. And yet this agent talked to her sales manager and said, look, I'm going to take the blame on this. And lo and behold, called the listing agent, told them that it was, that she had accidentally, the documents had gone to spam, that it wasn't the other agent's fault, that she would be the point of contact if there was any questions that happened or whatever that might be. And from that point forward, that listing agent, who was very aggressive, called every single day, right? Was very much, very on top of it, very pushy on it. And yet, in the midst of holiday, in the midst of tragedy, they were able to get the deal closed. And the reason that I want to share that story is, we're coming up on Red Day. We know for us, our culture is something that is so important. And part of our culture is win-win, right? Or no deal, right? Win-win or no deal, integrity, do the right thing. And so I loved kind of hearing the way that our culture transcended just the real estate side of the transaction, and also in terms of who we partner with, and the way that somebody could truly say, hey, let me help you out here and take ownership of this, even though it wasn't necessarily my fault, because it's just the right thing to do, right? And that they were still able to make that deal happen. And so I wanted to share that with you guys this morning, because I think, life happens and human error happens, and things happen. And it's important that we lean on the team that we have, and we lean on the resources that we have to help us through those tough situations. And it moved and warmed my heart this morning. So I just wanted to start with that before we jump into our market update. And then we have a lot of additional news we're going to be sharing today. So let me go ahead and jump into our market update. The other thing I want to note, guys, if you have not signed up for the $1 billion panel tomorrow, right? I will tell you this. I want you guys to log on early. It will absolutely be filled. There are over 500 registries right now. There is only room for 500 on the call, right? So definitely you're going to want to take advantage of that. It's a free panel, unlike any that we've seen in a very long time, with some extremely, extremely heavy hitters. It's a panel. That type of panel is usually the type where you have to buy a pretty expensive ticket for. We're extremely excited to be able to see some of those speakers. I'll cover who the speakers are at the end, but I want to remind you, if you have not registered yet, especially those of you that are on the call live right now, I know you got the text message. Please, please, please register so that you get access to that and log on early tomorrow as well. So let's go ahead and jump into our market update, starting with showings, right? Starting with showings. So we've been talking about this for the past couple weeks. We know that our dark blue, right? Our dark blue is last year. So that's going to be a bit of an anomaly year, obviously, because of the pandemic. And then we see that our light blue is going to be a little more reminiscent of 2019. That's a little bit more of our baseline. We can also see our yellow, which is where we're currently at. Now, we know anytime we experience a dip, right, we always want to inspect what we're expecting. We know that this dip was accounted for by our Easter holiday, right? So holiday weekend, what happens? People spend time with family and are not necessarily, just kind of hammering out on showings. And yet we saw not only that quick recovery, but as I had mentioned, we see, because we stop a couple showings, we get a little bit of a release of pent up demand here. And now we've stabilized a little bit more. So still seems to be on an overarching kind of upward trajectory, but not necessarily, as big as some of the increases that we saw in some of these different dips, right? When we were experiencing a lot of the different shifts and anomalies of 2020. So showings, still pretty active. We're still seeing multiple properties. Overall showings are up 88.5%. We are still seeing, that most buyers right now, not only are they seeing more homes on average, but that showing period is longer. So we know that traditionally, when we talk about the life cycle of a lead, we know that a client will generally begin their process about 7 to 10 weeks, according to NAR statistics, before they're actually ready to make a home purchase. Obviously, right now, that period of time is extended because we're, especially on the buyer side, why? Because we're seeing so much competition, especially with some of the decreases in inventory, that buyers are just seeing more properties. They're spending more time in this showing kind of period as well. Jumping over to our pricing trends. So in Los Angeles County, our under contract price for the last week was, the median price was $719,000. The median sold price, $720,000. And the median for new inventory was 745,000. As we've been watching, our under contracts at sold and new pricing has been up on average when we look at the past 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 prior. Under contracts is up 4.2. That accounts for about a little bit over $28,000 on average higher in the last 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 prior. 5% up for sold pricing. That's almost $34,000 higher, and 5.6 increase on new inventory, meaning that properties are being priced over $38,000 higher in the last 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 prior. So we are seeing that these under contract and sold inventory, those prices being driven up, it has that ripple effect, right? Now, all of a sudden we have higher comparables. And so prices are being reflected on those higher comparables, which is why we're seeing such a significant increase in our new pricing. Inventory trends. So inventory, again, right? We see that we had gone up a little bit in terms of new inventory. We have kind of that dip across the board again. Under contract, there was 1,253 properties that went under contract in Los Angeles County last week. 1,156 properties that sold in LA County last week, and 1,104 new properties coming on the market within the last week. A bit of a decrease from the week prior, well, the 2 weeks prior actually. So we'll kind of keep watching this because again, we want to see what these trends look like overall. However, when we start looking at our trends for the last 12 weeks, under contract is up 34.3%. Right? We've been watching that. We know what happens in the fourth quarter of the year, especially as we deal with a lot of holidays, Thanksgiving, right? The holidays at the end of the year. We tend to see those under contract kind of start to decrease a little bit. And as that goes up in the first quarter of the year, sold follows, right? Sold follows. So under contract is up 34.3. Last week, we saw that sold finally went positive and it's continuing to go up. So sold inventory is up 2.9%, and new inventory coming on the market up 34.6%. So even though we are in a little bit of a lower inventory market still, right, we are seeing new inventory coming on the market. We are seeing that sellers that are motivated are making moves now to put their home on the market. So definitely make sure if you have any sellers that are in your pipeline right now is a great time to make sure that you are having those conversations with them. One of the statistics that Rich had shared last week was the percentage of people that don't know what their home is worth, right? And it was over 60% of people that have no idea what their property is worth. Now, had they any idea, might that change, the goals that they have in real estate this year? Might it be of interest to them to potentially sell this year? Is that a conversation that we should be having or that we're having with our clients right now, right? So really important that we take those things into consideration because we're seeing prices increase across the board. We can see that again here in Orange County, right? Under contract at $875,000, sold inventory at $890,000, new inventory at $830,000. Under contract pricing is up 5.9%. Obviously, Orange County has a higher price point, so that accounts for almost $47,000. It's a little bit less. Sold is up 7.8. That's over $61,000, and new inventory up 6.3. That means properties are being priced over $50,000 higher within the last 12 weeks than the 12 to 24 weeks prior. In terms of our inventory trends, 734 properties went under contract in Orange County within the last week, 768 sold within the last week, and 515 new properties on the market within the last week in Orange County. Overall, looking at that in terms of the last 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 prior, under contract is up 33.9%, which accounts for about 200 properties week over week. Sold up 8.2%. So again, right, we saw this flip last week. And now we're seeing that kind of consistency where it's staying up. It's going to continue to rise based on our under contract. And then new inventory, 35.8%, right? It's an increase of 35.8% week over week as well. Now looking at our Riverside County pricing trends. So now we're getting into some of our lower priced counties as well. Under contract at 479,000, sold at 475,000, and new at 450,000. Under contract pricing is up 3.7% in Riverside County. That's a little bit more than $16,000 higher. Sold up 3.3. That's about almost $15,000 higher. New pricing is the highest increase at 6.2%. That's over $27,000. So we know homes are being priced about $27K higher in the last 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 prior. Taking a look at our inventory. So I want you to notice again, right, our sold has stayed flipped here in Riverside County. Under contract, we've seen an increase, a little bit of a decrease, 635 properties under contract in Riverside County within the last week, 559 properties sold within the last week, and 538 properties on the market within the last week in Riverside County. Overall, in under contract, we've seen an increase of 28.8%. As is typical, we're seeing sold slowly follow at 1.4%. Again, just based on what we're seeing in under contract, we should see these sold numbers continue to increase as well. And then new inventory is up 30.4%. So again, we're seeing more inventory coming on the market so far in all three counties that we've looked at so far. Now, finally jumping over to San Bernardino, our lowest priced county under contract is at 415,000. Sold at 438,000, new inventory at 399,000. So that's a little bit of a discrepancy. Price on the new inventory here is a little bit lower than in the other categories, although we are seeing an increase from a trend perspective. So it may just be we're seeing a lot more of the price driven up when we're looking at under contract and sold. Under contract pricing is up 2.1%. That's about a little bit over $8,000. Sold up 3.5%. That's almost $14,000. And new pricing is up about $21,000 as well. Looking at our inventory for San Bernardino County, under contract is at 578 properties came onto the market in San Bernardino County last week. 498 properties sold and 617 properties came on the market. Now, this is the one county that I'm going to note. Last week, this stayed even as well. So you can see under contract 28.6, although we are seeing more properties going under contract in the last 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 prior, this under contract number is not as high as the other three counties. And so the sold, last week, it stayed pretty even as well. This week, we're staying at a 0% increase, although we are anticipating that this is going to flip to positive probably within the next, I'd say it's going to be within probably the next 2 to 3 weeks that we're going to see this kind of flip. We are seeing that it's the slowest in terms of that kind of increase right now. So under contract up 28.6%, sold has stayed pretty flat, and new is up 36%. So a couple other things that I want to make sure that I'm going over today. I think it's really important. We look at a lot of these numbers and we look at, what are the trends that we're seeing from a price perspective? What are the trends that we're looking at from an inventory perspective? What does that mean for your clients, right? We're also looking at showings and things like that as well. Now, we know that your buyers are still experiencing a highly competitive market. We can see that prices are kind of continuing to rise across all fronts. And we are seeing this is one of the things that's going to be really important for you guys is when you are working with a client, we don't just want to look at this idea of the market as a whole, right? We can't just look at the market as a whole. We have to look at it county by county, and then we need to look at the micro markets in which we're actually representing a client, right? We know that there's a very big difference between what a buyer's market is and a seller's market is. And the majority of the time, what we would consider the market that we're in right now across the board would be considered a seller's market, right? There's not enough inventory for the buyers that are currently entering the market. Now, that's if we look at the market as a whole. When we start looking at subsets or subgroups, things change a little bit, right? Obviously, luxury is very, very different. In a high price point, we may not have as many buyers that are competing for a particular property. So does that make it a seller's market or does it make it a buyer's market? Well, it depends the months of inventory, right? But it changes the competition. The same thing with condos. We see a lot of people leaning towards single family residence right now. So it's just important that we're having those conversations with our buyers so that they know what to expect when we're kind of going into the market, and that we're being as competitive as possible when we are representing our buyers on a particular transaction. The other piece of that is going to be, and part of the reason I wanted to bring that up is because I've had a couple of you come and ask about, hey, I've got this client and, they have down payment assistance and we're getting beat at every corner in terms of putting in offers on property, because now you have, people that are coming in with conventional loans or coming in with a high amount of cash down or whatever that might be. So you want to really have those conversations where your clients on, what is it that they are approved for? How are they packaged, right? And what I mean by that is what they are coming to the table with, is that an attractive package in terms of the eyes of the seller, right? Because we know certain areas are going to be a little bit more competitive. And where and in what micro market maybe is their package a little bit more competitive than it might be, right? It might be very difficult for somebody that is coming in with needing down payment assistance or needing a credit to come into a market where all the offers that are on the table are coming in an extra, 20, 30 or 3% cash, right? And that's what they're competing against. So you just kind of want to make sure that you're taking all those factors into account when you're packaging the buyer and helping them see where are they going to have the best chances of kind of making a purchase. The same thing when we're talking with our sellers, right? We're watching some of these price trends, and yet we want to make sure we're also looking at what is active on the market in any particular case. So we can see what the trends are, and we can see the trends might be trending upwards. And so it can be very easy for us to say, well, I want to price it higher then, right? Or the client to think, well, in that case, my home is worth $575, but I think I can get 600. So let's price it at 600. It's going to be very different style in terms of how we enter the market, right? We want to have the most eyeballs possible. We want to give our sellers that biggest competitive advantage possible. And so we may want to strategically price, right, a little bit lower based on what the competition is that's on the market. What are the properties that they're competing against, so that we can get more eyeballs on our property and kind of drive that. Now, I wouldn't do that too much if it's a market that is super low in inventory, because that's also going to drive the number of offers that you're getting. And it's one thing when we're dealing with 5 to 6 offers. It's a whole nother when we're dealing with 20, 30, 40 offers and having to reply to everybody. So just wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit more. I also wanted to go ahead and just share a couple of statistics that I think were absolutely phenomenal. We were talking with this on our leadership call this morning for Keller Williams. NAR. So NAR is the National Association of Realtors. This is all the real estate agents nationwide. NAR's existing March home sales was down from February 3.7%. I want to note that Keller Williams, right, as a whole, KWRI International, is up 37%. I want to note though, because 37%, that's great. Congratulations to all of KW. Us as an office, we are up 100%. So congratulations, because you guys are having an absolutely, we're seeing phenomenal momentum, even with this month that we're in right now. Now, NAR's existing March home sales year over year was up 12.3%. KW doubled, more than doubled that, and is up 30%. As an office, we are also up 30%. So I'm so excited to be able to share that. I think it's always important that we kind of share some of the wins, some of the statistics that we're seeing as well on the market overall. A couple other things that I want to cover before we kind of jump off. I want to talk a little bit about home prices, right? I want to talk about home prices because obviously we're seeing some of the trends within the area as well. When we start looking at it, so one of the things that I started looking at was the home prices from what we would consider a peak to the peak right now. Okay, and I'm going to share an article on this because I think it's that important. 2006 would be considered the peak of the market, right? 2006 would be considered the peak of the market. Obviously, we know that in 2007, 2008, home prices started to decline, right? And one of the things that I think is so important, a lot of times we'll get clients that say something like, well, what if the market goes down? Right? Or is it the right time to buy right now? What if there's a shift in the market, right? Now, none of us have a crystal ball. None of us can anticipate what happens next. We can only look at the trends, and based on the trends, we interpret what's most likely. Now, we know that right now, just based on the market we're in, there's a lot of different factors that kind of come into play that are going to affect what this market does over the next couple of years. Obviously, there's a ton of properties that are in mortgage forbearance. Although, according to some of what we were looking at Black Knight, we did experience another week of forbearance improvement overall, right? Although there's still about 4.4% of homeowners that remain in some type of pandemic plan. Now, we know there's an eviction moratorium, there's a foreclosure moratorium, there's all of these different things that have come into play, adjustments in the economy, right? All of these different elements that are going to come into play in terms of what is the market that is coming. I was having a conversation last week with somebody. We were talking specifically about commercial real estate, right? How in reality right now, there's not a lot of multifamily that's entering the market. Yet what we're seeing a lot of is what? Office and retail space, right? Because there was a lot of businesses that unfortunately shut down. That has a ripple effect into the market. The same thing right now with some of the things that have happened within the past year, a little bit over a year at this point, we will at some point see that ripple effect. And could that affect prices? Possibly. Could it also affect interest rates? Most likely, right? Interest rates tend to go up when prices tend to go down. Now, when we have a conversation with our clients about whether right now is a good time to make a purchase or not, what I always want to focus on is really understanding, one, is this property something that they're looking at it being a short-term investment, or is this property, somewhere that they're really anticipating living in, right? That they want to be able to keep for a while. Is this going to be their home? What does that look like, right? Because anytime we've gone through any sort of market shift, and they happen almost every decade, there's some sort of market shift, some sort of market correction. What we know to be true is that the market will always trend on an upward trajectory over time, right? So if their goal is to build equity, right, then in my personal opinion, it always behooves somebody to invest when they are able to, and they feel comfortable with the payments, and they feel stable, and they're able to take advantage of the market as it is, being right now extremely low interest rates, so they're able to borrow at a great kind of space. Now, when we look at pricing overall, I want to give you guys an example. So if we look at the peak of the market that happened in 2006, obviously there was a little bit of a dip that happened. And this is specifically, I'm looking at Los Angeles, although we can kind of see this happening across on most markets, right? But in Los Angeles, we saw that dollars per square foot in 2006 hovered above 400. Okay, they hovered above 400. Dollars per square foot right now are at about 500. At the lowest point in the market, right, which was about 2009, right, was about 2009, dollars per square foot hovered at about 250 or so, right? So I just want to put that in perspective, is that we saw, where did that recovery happen? It from about 2016, 2017, about 2018, it was right at 400 per square foot. That's almost exactly 10 years, right? So I just wanted to kind of put that in perspective. When you're talking with your clients about this market, it's important to really understand the history of what happens in real estate if that's a concern that they're having. Because we see that overall, if they're not looking at selling right away, if it's not a flip, if it's not that sort of investor, then in reality, what they're trading by waiting is the hope that prices will go down, with almost the certainty that if they do, interest rates will go up, right? As well as the lost time of the equity they could have been gaining now. So it's just important that we really have a bit more of kind of that conversation around it as well. I did want to go ahead. So a lot of information today. I wanted to make sure we spent a little bit of time on that. I want to remind you. So for those of you, I see Shelly says she's registered for the $1 billion panel. This is going to be an absolutely phenomenal panel tomorrow. I want to give you a perspective again of some of the people that are going to be speaking. We've got Denny Grimes, who sold 80 million in volume in 2020. Chris Suarez, 2 billion in volume for 5,400 units for his team. Brady Sandall, who is here in California, 200 units, 150 million. He's part of our region, right? Brady is part of our region. Derek Oy, who is also part of our region, who we've had speak here at the office, 215.8 million in volume, 411 units right here in California. Ceci Paguano, 157 million. Harrison Beecher, 139 million, 313 units. Daniel Dixon, 118 million, 322 units. Jason Abrams, the head of industry for KW, absolutely phenomenal individual. And Tristan Ahumada, the CEO of Labco Agents. They are going to be talking about the future of real estate. They're going to talk about seller listing best practices, because they know right now, what have we been talking about? List to last. Developing a mindset of steel, right? Developing a mindset of steel, building a mega sphere, dominating the luxury market, and building your business scale. This is going to be a like game changer panel. I'm so excited for it. Tomorrow from 1 to 4. Please log in early, right? Log in early. Make sure you are on, because I would hate for you to, we know right now it's at capacity. From what I know right now, it is 100% at capacity. We've stopped registration. And yet, we also know that there's going to be individuals that are still kind of still able to trying to get in tomorrow. You should have from Zoom. If you already registered, you're going to get the link directly from Zoom. It's going to be a lot easier for you to get in if you go through the link directly from Zoom, instead of trying to go back to the link to register all over. Okay, so the link that we're going to send out on text message and email for you guys, that link is specific to the registration. If you are already registered, you should receive your own link. Please log in through your own link, because I would hate for you to miss it, because people are trying to re-register to get in, even though they're already registered, right? If you registered on the Eventbrite, we registered you on Zoom, right? We registered you on Zoom so that you're getting that Zoom link specifically. So ignore the Eventbrite emails, go straight to the link that we gave you on Zoom as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to share, I don't know how many of you guys have been into, this is for KW, but those that have been into Command lately, I want you guys to know that there is a phenomenal magazine that's available for your clients that you can customize. You can have it be an amazing digital magazine. It can be a printed magazine, whatever you want. It's super simple to customize. You literally only have to customize the bio page. And then if you want to add a page to highlight any of your past sold listings, so you can send that to your client, That's available in there as well. There's one that was available for this past quarter. The Q2 magazine is going to be coming out within the next week or so. So keep an eye on that because it is killer. I was in there this morning looking at it, and it's got some absolutely phenomenal information. With that, I know we went over a little bit today. I'm working hard to kind of keep you guys at 30 minutes, but you know, there's always a lot of information to cover. I hope you guys,
question.
oh, yes, absolutely.
So I was a little confused. So the link that we got from registering, we're not using that one. We're using the one that you sent, or that
link,
in the morning.
So the link that you got on the text message, if you got the text message today, you would have registered via Zoom, and it would have had your registration via Zoom.
No, I registered last week.
Okay, so you registered on Eventbrite?
I suppose I got an email.
No worries. So you're going to get, if you registered via Eventbrite, then you will also get an email from Eventbrite. Ignore that email. If you registered via Eventbrite or via Zoom, you are going to get an email from Zoom specifically.
It's already in my calendar. I did the $1 billion panel confirmation, Brian Erhan, whatever.
Perfect. That's perfect. Yes.
You that one?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And this is why I'm saying you guys log in a little bit early, and that way if you have any issues, I'm going to be standing by. I know I'll be logged in early as well. It's going to be, I'll be kind of monitoring it because I want to make sure everybody's able to get in.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, you guys. And with that, I hope you guys have an absolutely phenomenal rest of your day.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Monica.